again, a way to get the cash out of the system. The Fed, however, says this is not an indication of tightening monetary policies or raising rates anytime soon. It's just an idea. So is it a good idea? Dan Schaefer with us, Uri Mann as well. Uri, is it a good idea?
I think it is a good idea. This tool has been well flagged in terms of the business community, and the banks are aware that this is something the Fed wants to use. You can think of this as sort of like the parents giving the kids an allowance and telling the kids, hey, don't spend your money because if you hold on to it and save, we'll help you with additional dollars when it comes time to your birthday to buy your favorite gift. So what the Fed is doing is saying it's encouraging the banks to park their money as opposed to leaving it in the system. And as everyone remembers, we have about $1 trillion that the Fed has put into the banking system. So the system is flush with cash. And when they start raising rates, they want to be able to control the amount of cash in the system. This is one tool that will help the Fed.
Dan, what's your take?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. He's also asking for opinions on it first, but it's basically a CD for the banks at the Federal Reserve. So instead of having the instant today liquidity, he wants to push out that liquidity to up to about a year so that the money is not in the system pushing up other assets. So it's a way to kind of curtail inflation concerns and keep money back at the Fed that's not liquid to flush out some of the liquidity instead of using some of the other tactics that are normally used by the Fed.
Dan, what kind of transparency do you think we need? That's one of the conversations we have about the Fed, and a lot of people want the Fed to be audited. So if the Fed does a program like this with the banks, some of which still have federal guarantees, like Citigroup, for example, what kind of transparency do we need to see?
Well, this is transparency right here, that he's made the announcement and asking for comment. So that gives transparency that the Fed is not just making a move and the market gets shocked by it. The audit issue is about things that have occurred from the Federal Reserve prior to now, which are under suspicion that need to be investigated. And that's a separate issue with the movement by Ron Paul.
So you don't think, for example, like we should know that Goldman Sachs is going to park X amount of money at the Fed?
In that sense?
Need to know that? Sure.
Yes, I think that would be great transparency at that level if we knew which banks were parking money. But I think the real issue is why is he locking up this money? What does he see coming, and why is he trying to come up with an idea to take some of the money out of the system? And I want to remind everybody that in 1930s, part of what caused the Great Depression was the tightening of the money supply by the Federal Reserve, which was accordingly an error. So this is a way to tighten the money supply, but not in such a strong way that would cause a major slowdown in the economy.
You say this is well flagged, we've kind of understood that a plan like this could potentially be coming. The moment that the Fed announces this officially, as Dan mentioned, asking for comments, but obviously it's a precursor for something coming, as he also mentions. The moment that the Fed says this is available, what happens to the market? What do you think the market reaction is?
I don't think there'll be much reaction at all. They'll make it available, but they won't really start using it until rates start, getting pushed higher. I think the important thing here, to your point earlier with your question about transparency and independence, those are two separate issues. From a transparency perspective, this tool goes further in making the Fed's policies more transparent. We need to make sure that I'm not in favor of letting the Fed lose any of its independence. One of the reasons the Fed has been so successful in helping the U.S. avert Armageddon and bringing stability to the financial sector is because it's been independent, and Congress has not had any influence on its decisions. So,
would you want a dollar amount? I mean, as a financial analyst, would you want to know, like I asked Dan, how much money which financial firms were actually putting into this program?
Sure, I would, and that's all about transparency, but not necessarily, that we can still keep the Fed independent without actually infringing on, just getting it more transparent.
I'm going to have to leave it there. Dan and Uri, thank you very much. We have some chain store data coming out in just a couple minutes, so we're going to run, and then we'll talk to you guys a little bit about that. In the meantime,